In Unit 3, Lecture 2, Part 5, we're going to wrap up our section on virulence factors that promote bacterial colonization of the host by looking at how the ability to evade adaptive immunity plays a role in enabling colonization. So as always, read through your fundamental statements and make sure you learn your detailed learning objectives for your Unit 3 exam. So again, our last several lectures have dealt with virulence factors that promote bacterial colonization of the host, the ability to survive and live inside or on the body. And we've looked now at a number of factors, how they can use motility to contact cells, how they can adhere to resist physical removal, how some can invade host cells to get free food and resist body defenses, how they have to be able to compete for iron and other nutrients. We've looked at ways in which they can resist innate immune defenses, making it harder for us to remove them. And finally, we'll look at the sixth way, the ability to evade the other immune defense, adaptive immunity. So in this SoftChalk lesson, we'll look at how the ability to evade adaptive immunity promotes colonization. Remember, anything a bacterium can do to resist innate immune defenses and or adaptive immune defenses will increase its chance of it surviving inside the body and colonizing. So one of our major defenses against bacteria during humoral immunity is the production of antibody molecules against the organism. And as we've learned, the tips of the antibody, called the FAB or antigen binding fragment, as we see in Figure 1, have a three-dimensional shape that's complementary to some epitope of some protein or polysaccharide antigen. So you remember, antigens are typically proteins and polysaccharides, recognized as non-self. But what we actually recognize are a few amino acids sticking out of a protein antigen or a few sugars sticking out of a polysaccharide antigen, what we call epitopes. And so the antibodies are tailor-made that the tips of the antibody, the FAB portion, have a groove that fits that epitope on that antigen in a very specific manner, like pieces of a puzzle. And then the bottom part of the antibody directs biological activity that can do things like bind bacteria to phagocytes for opsonization, bind them to NK cells, as we'll see later in the semester, or activating the complement pathways. So these antibody molecules we make during humoral immunity or antibody production as part of our adaptive immune responses are a key part in helping fight against bacteria, as well as other microorganisms. And we've already seen a number of ways these antibodies are actually protective during adaptive immunity. So we've seen quite a few times now when we talked about phagocytosis that some antibodies like IgG and IgE function as opsonins. They stick bacteria to phagocytes, like we see in Figure 2. Where the FAB part of the antibody binds to epitopes on the bacterium, and then the FC portion binds to receptors on phagocytes for enhanced attachment or opsonization. And this is an animation of that we've showed you many times now. So again, one of the major ways antibodies protect is that we make antibodies where the FAB portion of the antibody, the antigen binding portion, is tailor-made to fit epitopes, a specific epitope of a specific antigen on a specific bacterium. And once the FAB part of the antibody locks onto the epitopes, then the FC portion can bind to FC receptors on phagocytes for opsonization or enhanced attachment. And of course, at that point, the organism can be engulfed, placed in a phagosome, and destroyed with lysosomes. Antibodies like immunoglobulin G, immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin M, and we'll learn about all these different antibodies later on in Unit 6, but these can bind to bacterial adhesins, to the adhesive tip of bacterial pili or to capsules, and block the attachment of bacteria to host cells. Remember, one of the things all microbes have to do if they're going to colonize the body is attached to cells, and they do this typically with adhesins and or pili and capsules. And so this animation shows how that works. So remember, many bacteria use cell wall adhesins to bind to receptors on host cells. And once they bind, then they can resist flushing and they can colonize. And of course, many gram-negatives first use pili and then cell wall adhesins to adhere. Well, antibodies can be made against these cell wall adhesins or against the adhesive tips of pili, or even against the glycocalyx. In the case of adhesins, if the FAB of the antibody is made to fit the adhesins on the cell wall of the bacterium, they will bind to and cover up the bacterium so the adhesins can no longer bind to adhesin receptors and the bacteria can be flushed away. And of course, if that was an antibody like IgG, it could also then promote opsonization. So another way antibodies protect the body is blocking bacterial adherence. And that's how they protect us against viruses when we vaccinate against viruses. We make antibodies that coat the virus so they can't bind to receptors on our host cell. IgG and IgM can activate the classical complement pathway. And once we activate the complement pathway, then we get the 4 benefits of the complement pathway: promoting inflammation, promoting chemotaxis, producing the membrane attack complex to lyse membrane-bound cells, etc. And then finally, IgA and IgM are actually several monomer antibodies stuck together, and they're good at clumping bacteria together. And if bacteria are clumped together, they're easier to remove by phagocytes than if they're individual. So we see that in figure 3 here. Immunoglobulin M is usually the first antibody we make in response to an infection. And then there's actually 5 of the individual antibodies hooked together, 5 of these Ys hooked together. So it actually has 10 FAB sites. And it's very good at clumping bacteria together or causing them to agglutinate. And they can be filtered out of the lymphoid system more readily that way, or phagocytosed more effectively if they're clumped together. So those are ways that antibodies normally work to protect us, by promoting opsonization, sticking bacteria to phagocytes, by blocking the attachment of bacteria to host cells by producing antibodies against adhesins, the adhesive tips of pili or capsules, activating the complement pathways so we get the benefits of the complement pathways in body defense, clumping bacteria together so they're easier to remove by phagocytes. But of course, anything a bacterium can do to resist this will be an advantage. So bacteria can use a variety of mechanisms to resist the antibodies we make during adaptive immunity. Now, when we talked about pili back in Unit 1, we mentioned that bacteria can change the adhesive tips of their pili. Escherichia coli, the urogenic strains that cause urinary tract infections, are very good at doing this. Neisseria gonorrhoeae is very good at doing this, which allows it to adhere to a variety of different cells in the body. But also then bacteria can, by altering their adhesive tips of their pili, change the shape so that antibodies made against the previous shape no longer fit. And the same applies to adhesins. By changing adhesins, antibodies made against a previous adhesin don't fit the new shaped adhesin. So by being able to make new adhesins or being able to make new adhesive tips to pili that have a different shape, every time we see this new shape, we have to start all over again and making new antibodies that fit that shape. And again, it often takes 5 to 10 days to make protective levels of antibodies. Figures 5A and 5B illustrate this down here, as do figures 4. So again, here we've seen that bacteria can make different shape adhesive tips that allow it to adhere to different cell types. Well, if we make antibodies that fit this adhesive tip, that will then would stop this particular strain from binding to this receptor. But by making a different shaped adhesive tip, the antibodies that fit this adhesive tip on the left wouldn't fit the one on the right. And so now we'd have to recognize that new adhesive tip, make new antibodies against that. And that's kind of illustrated with the adhesins down here in figures 5A and 5B. Again, we eventually make antibodies that fit a particular epitope like an adhesin on the surface of the bacterium, but by making an altered epitope, different order of amino acids with a different shape, the previous antibodies that fit that epitope don't fit the new shape. And now we have to recognize the new shape, make new antibodies that fit that. And by making having multiple alleles to make different epitopes, this enables the bacteria to stay a step ahead of our immune defenses. Strains of Neisseria meningitidis that cause meningococcal meningitis and Streptococcus pyogenes that causes strep throat. Neisseria meningitidis has a capsule composed of sialic acid. Streptococcus pyogenes has a capsule composed of hyaluronic acid. And both sialic acid and hyaluronic acid are polysaccharides that resemble human carbohydrates on our tissues. And so since their capsule covering looks like a human protein or polysaccharide, they're not going to be recognized as foreign by our lymphocytes, and we won't make antibodies as well against those capsules. So again, by producing a substance similar to a human protein or a human polysaccharide, and coating themselves in that kind of masks them from our immune system so we don't recognize the microbial proteins and polysaccharides. So some bacteria simply coat themselves with host-type proteins, and as a result, we avoid making antibodies against them because our lymphocytes don't recognize epitopes of our own protein. They only recognize foreign proteins. Both Staphylococcus aureus that causes abscesses and Strep pyogenes that causes strep throat have kind of unique thing they do. Staphylococcus aureus produces protein A, Streptococcus pyogenes produces protein G, and both of these proteins bind to the Fc portion of IgG. Now remember, the FAB portion of the antibody is the one that fits epitopes. The Fc is the part that's supposed to bind to phagocytes for enhanced attachment. So the bacteria become coated with antibodies in a way that prevents opsonization. And if we look at figure 6, we see Staph aureus producing protein A here. So this is the part of the antibody that normally binds to the bacterium, but protein A, which is also an adhesin for Staph aureus, binds to the Fc portion of IgG, the part that's supposed to stick the bacterium to the phagocyte. And protein G does the same thing for Streptococcus pyogenes. So by binding the portion of the antibody that's supposed to stick the phagocytes to the bacterium, that blocks opsonization by that antibody. Salmonella often undergoes phase variation. They can make different capsular types or different flagellar antigens. So again, by changing their capsular polysaccharides or changing the amino acid sequence of the flagellin, they can change their antigens so the antibodies that fit the previous strain don't fit the new form. So again, as we pointed out in figures 5A and 5B, if an epitope can be changed on the surface, then the antibodies that fit the old epitope don't fit the new shape. And sometimes, again, that's called phase variation. A number of bacteria that live on mucous membranes, bacteria like Haemophilus influenzae, Streptococcus pneumoniae, Helicobacter pylori, Shigella flexneri, the meningococcus, the gonococcus, enteropathogenic E. coli, all of these produce what are called immunoglobulin proteases. Now, an immunoglobulin is another name for antibody, and antibodies are proteins. So these are proteases, enzymes that break down our antibodies that we're making against the bacteria. So immunoglobulin proteases are able to degrade the body's protective antibodies or immunoglobulins, especially the ones found in body secretions. Now, the antibodies we make to protect our mucous membranes are primarily an antibody called IgA or immunoglobulin A. This is one that we send out into mucus to protect mucous membranes, and that's where these bacteria live. So they produce an immunoglobulin protease that actually breaks down immunoglobulin A. So these initial protective antibodies in the mucus aren't working against the bacteria. Now, eventually we can produce antibodies like IgG against them and still get rid of them, but this provides the organism an advantage if they can break down the protective antibodies in the area where they're initially growing. And of course, as we mentioned, many pathogenic bacteria as well as microbiota produce communities in biofilms in the body. And again, that helps them to better resist host immune systems as well as attack by antibiotics. So those are some of the ways that that bacteria can resist our adaptive immunity through antibody production against the organism, by changing the shape of the epitope so the antibodies don't fit, by interfering with opsonization or any of the other mechanisms we looked at. And again, anything a bacterium can do to resist innate immune defenses and anything it can do to resist adaptive immune defenses are going to help it survive in the body and colonize. And there's a self-quiz for this SoftChalk lesson. So that wraps up our section on the virulence factors that promote colonization or infection, allowing the bacteria to first establish themselves in the body, whether or not they cause disease. For the remainder of this unit, we're going to be looking at virulence factors that cause harm to the body, that enable that bacterium that's colonized to cause disease.